Hello and welcome to the Slow the Fuck Down podcast with Glow London and The Drum. I'm Emma Harris, Chief of Glow London and founder of the Slow the Fuck Down movement. In May 22, I had a completely out of the blue cardiac arrest and beat odds of 96-4, surviving unscathed. Since then, I've been committed to sharing the perspective I'm now blessed with, that many of us are wasting the precious time we have on this planet with unsustainable pace and stress. In each episode, I'll welcome some fabulous guests onto the show to share their stories of how slowing down or not has affected their lives, their teams, and their businesses. Let's get started. Welcome to Slow the Fuck Down podcast. Today I am joined by the lovely Lizzie Penny and Sue Todd. Lizzie is co-author of the #1 Sunday Times bestseller Work Style and co-founder of Hoxby, work design consultants who believe that ways of working grounded in autonomy and trust can transform well-being, inclusion and productivity. I completely agree. And Sue is the CEO of NABS, the brilliant organisation for the advertising and media industry, supporting people through burnout and mental health challenges. She's also a passionate advocate of healthier workplace culture. There is a theme today, one that I'm very passionate about myself. Welcome to the show, Lizzie and Sue.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, well, we always start with the same question. I mean, God, we've got two absolute experts here, but it feels like things are worse than ever and getting harder. What do you think the root cause of that is? I'll come to you first, Lizzie.
I think if you take that at a macro level in the world, then I think that we are seeing lots of people forgetting that we're all human, ultimately. Conflict, people not having the freedom to speak up, people finding day-to-day life difficult. I think all of it goes back to the fact that we're all humans and the world is not being designed around humans. People aren't thinking about the human people at the heart of everything. For me, my focus is on work design, but it's on designing work to fit around life and recognising that we're all fallible. We all have shit going on, because I assume we're allowed to swear on this podcast.
I fucking hope so, because we should slow the fuck down. You may.
And we need to redesign work around life. And for some of the people, name no names, and I'm not getting political, in the world, they just need to remember that every life is human and that actually every life counts. So.
Well, there's a lot of that would take up the rest of the show if you were to name the names, but I completely agree with you. The divisiveness is the thing I really struggle with, because everyone's got a point. You know, I genuinely believe it's an NLP presupposition that everyone has a positive intention, that even if they disagree with you, the people that disagree with some things I fundamentally, everyone has a positive intention, but it's just the divisiveness that I agree with you. It's a really good answer. Thank you. Sue, you must be at the thick of it.
I think it's the question I've been asked the most in the 4 years I've been at NABS. The question I get asked the most is, so it feels worse. Is it worse? Do more people come to NABS because more people are up for getting help and are aware of NABS and there's more permission to get help, or is it worse? Yeah. And the answer I always give is it's definitely both. Right. It's definitely, I think, a current environment post-COVID that is harder for lots of people. And I think what's happened post-COVID is that we seem to have just come off our axis a bit in terms of a little bit of an obsession with output and productivity. And I think COVID was the start that accelerated it. And then we never seem to have got back to any form of balance around the fact that our brains and evolution's a lot slower than everything else that's going on. I think we all know that our brains have not evolved to cope with some of the modern aspects of life and work. And, if we don't remember that our brain hasn't quite caught up and we need rest and recovery and balance, as well as output and productivity and all the things that we're attracted to, then, so there will be a consequence. And that consequence doesn't have to be, something really dramatic for somebody, but for a lot of people in our industry, it can be something quite big. And that's why I think more and more people are asking for help, which we're glad they are, but also we want to educate people and spend our time leaning into what can everybody do to push back and to also set more boundaries for how they can, do work in a great way, but not, try and get their brains to do something that, frankly, they're not really evolved to do, which is constantly work on output and not have any rest and recovery. So I think that's the fundamental truth of what I think's happened in the last 5 years. It was happening before then, but I think it's been accelerated.
Yeah, God, it's such a truth, isn't it? I don't think at the time of COVID we had any idea of not just the implications of what was happening then that felt so dramatic and tragic, but the ripple effect for years and years to come.
Definitely.
It's, that new normal thing.
Yeah.
We never went back, did we? It just took us to a trajectory. I'm sure I've bored everyone with this stat before, but since COVID, we're doing 2.5 hours extra work a day.
Yeah, yeah.
That's, an extra day and a half a week.
Yeah.
We've forgotten our boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of it is blamed on technology, but actually work needs to be intentionally designed and reshaped to fit with the digital age we live in, so that people have clearer boundaries. You can't just give everyone freedom to work all the time and expect them to know how to do that if you're not training them in the skills to know to say no, to turn off their notifications.
Yeah.
And that takes, new skills for people to do that.
Yeah.
I just don't think we all have that in ourselves, in our armoury, because we come from a world where when we entered the workforce, we were in an office every day, we were around other people, and you left it behind.
Yeah.
Or certainly, I think we all do. Not every generation has grown up in that workforce.
Yeah.
But
Well, also when your social life is in the same place as your work. So I'll often pick up my phone to order something or do something the kids have asked me to do, and then bang, there's email, or bang, there's the WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And I'm back in work mode. So I feel I'm somebody who's quite boundaried. Obviously, I have to be, otherwise I'm a big hypocrite. But you do. It's the way it's all in one place. I think people that have 2 phones are genius, because that's.
I have 2 phones.
Well, you're a genius. And I do think it is on us. I think you're right. You've got to create the workplace, but it's also on us to have that discipline to say no.
Yeah, and actually, at Hawkesby we have a proprietary model, and in the skills section of the model, it's divided into 10 modules, but they're in 2 groups of 5. The first is responsibility to self, and the other is dependability to others. And I think when we kind of came out of COVID and lots more people were working remotely, people said, well, what if people don't have that dependability to deliver their outputs? But I think it's exactly as you say, Sue. Actually, people are really accountable.
Yeah.
What they're not good at is the autonomy. They're not good at knowing themselves, knowing when they do their most productive work, learning to switch off. Those of us who are really driven, we could just work and work and work and work. And sometimes it takes something to happen to say, actually, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But it's an enormous shift, isn't it? I mean, I think a few of us were, we already knew some of the research that said autonomy in agency is one of the key motivators. I think it was the old Dan Pink model that said, that's one of the key
self-determination
motivators for lots of people. And we all recognised it 10, 15 years ago when we heard that stuff. But I think what's happened in the last 5 years is we have created spaces and works where we've asked people to potentially operate with more autonomy and agency in some spaces, and not tooled them up for how to do that, and not recognised that if the work design isn't quite so rigid, which it isn't, it's slightly more fluid, I'd say, for nearly everybody, then you have to have the tools to understand yourself and what the rules are in terms of the way you've still got to operate with other people. So you have to know your own brain, the way you respond to things, your work preferences, all the things that, if you've been around for ages and had lots of amazing training, you might have been blessed and lucky enough to get. But a lot of people don't get that help. Yeah. So they're just kind of, blowing in the wind. So I think a huge part of what we have to do as an industry, and NABS is trying to take up the mantle a little bit on it, is open up those discussions and give people a little bit more information, just educate them about how you recognise some of the signs in yourself and others that, you're struggling or it's difficult or, and what to do about it, because we're all very unique in that respect.
I think that's really true, and everything that we do is based on the individualisation of work. We can each shape our work to best suit us now, but doing that without a framework within which to do it is just anarchy, and can be hugely damaging for people's mental health. Yeah. If you can give them a framework and a language and a set systems and, particularly giving them a kind of shared culture where there is an understanding that because some people work better in the evening, they won't be online until later, having a kind of framework that isn't just written down somewhere, put in a folder, but that's actually role modelled by leaders, recognised by leaders, and you can see it in your conversations with your line managers. If you've got the framework and you've got the training and the skills, this could be an amazing era of work. But too many organisations aren't actually focusing on and kind of investing in that. They're kind of letting this just happen by itself. And I think we're at an age where actually intentional work design can be a source of competitive advantage as well.
Totally agree.
So,
I totally agree. But it's also hard work, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult work because I think exactly what you're talking about, and you're clearly, your business is an expert in it, trying to find tram lines and ground rules and frameworks that mean there's some consistency and some ways of operating collectively and collaboratively is clearly necessary. If we operate at a highly individual level, then it's chaos. We won't cooperate like we need
anarchy,
to.
I think,
Anarchy
is
a good word. It's a good word. But also, we're in this in-between space where we're trying to give people more agency and autonomy and trying to understand preferences from our neurodiversity to, our circadian rhythms, to the way our brains respond, to how we self-regulate, all those other things that we're trying to get better knowledge around, and trying to find the balance between those two things of collectivism and frameworks and guidelines versus allowing people some better agency is incredibly hard work to do.
Yeah.
I think it takes a very special type of workplace and lots of expertise that you clearly have, and a certain type of leader to go, I'm going to lean into that, it's worth it.
I agree.
Because I think it's really tricky stuff.
Yeah, and I agree, it's leadership plus culture, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it starts at the top. Setting that example, giving people permission, giving them the space, whether it's by framework or just leading by example.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see leaders, being surprised that they've got a workforce that are absolutely burnt out when they're doing it themselves.
Yeah.
They're sending emails at weekends, they're sending emails late at night. It's not that hard to put a delay on your outbox.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
But I absolutely agree with you, and I just think that blowing the wind at the moment, it feels a bit like arrogant. It really does, and that's the sort of language we're getting from our clients at the moment. That it's like it's just absolutely overwhelming. You both sound like, because you're in the space of helping people, that obviously hopefully we're all walking the walk, but how are you doing, Sue? How are you? I imagine it's a tough time for you guys.
Yeah, well, on a personal level, I'm in an odd space at the moment. If it's I think there's an opportunity to share personal stuff here as well, isn't there? Because I lost my mum 2 months ago, so I'm definitely on the grief journey.
Sue.
No, so it's an interesting space, and it's a different space, and it's one of the things that's been most interesting for me is that it does give you permission to be a bit more emotional, I think, generally, than maybe some other circumstances I've ever experienced have. So on a personal level, I'm finding that, interesting sounds like an odd choice of word when you're, grieving a bit, but it is quite an interesting space to think about that in terms of the context of work. And then from a NAB's perspective, I guess, and from an industry's perspective, I've got the bit between my teeth a bit because I can see the need for NAB being greater than ever. And I can see in its 110-year history, it's been here to support this industry. And for me, it feels like now more than ever it is needed to both educate and support. And the numbers in terms of people that are coming for our support is sort of validating that. But not every business, although lots of businesses do, support us financially. So I've kind of got the bit between my teeth about, if we really do believe, and I hear lots and lots of leaders who are fantastic in our industry say we know that the humanity and the people are core still to our success and how we thrive as a sector, then we do need to invest. And it's not just money and it's not just fundraising for NABs, it's time and capacity and thoughtfulness and intentionality around some of these topics, which is exactly what, your podcast is aiming to do, which is why it's so powerful. And if we just abstain from leaning into it and we think we can just leave it to the next generation or, then I think it's a real stain. So I've got the bit between my teeth about, saying thank you to all the people and rewarding and recognise them for the ones who do lean into NABs. And there are many who raise money for us and donate. But also trying to get round to the people who don't to say, come on, why not? I know most people in this industry believe that the health of our people and then being able to thrive is at the absolute cornerstone of the industry we all support and have loved and want to work in and do even better. So let's navigate forward together. So just, I've got the bit between my teeth, I guess, about that.
Well, let's support that. If you're listening and you've got some money that you can support NABs, if you've got people that are leaning on NABs in your organisation or you might need their support, then get in touch. You're going to be overwhelmed now, Sue.
Fantastic.
Give the support, give time, do something. How are you doing, Lizzie?
I'm great, actually.
love
Yes,
that.
I'm great. And I probably haven't been able to say that for quite a long time with the emphasis that I can now.
Yeah.
There's something emotional, isn't there, about being asked how you are? People don't do that with feeling that often. So I have just been discharged as a cancer patient, which has been a 6-year journey for me. So 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the same time as COVID. So, you know, hell, everyone's world was falling apart at the same time as mine was. But going through surgery, chemo, losing all my hair, radiotherapy, and then I've spent 5 years on medication, and that medication has actually had some pretty brutal side effects for me for the last 5 years. And kind of out of the blue, I knew that there was a big conversation with my oncologist coming, but kind of out of the blue, a few weeks ago, I was allowed to come off the drugs. I was discharged as a cancer patient, and I am back to normal. Wow. So watch out, because I've got all my energy and drive back that I used to have 6 years ago. So yeah, it's been a journey, and you know, various other things have happened along the way as well that mean it's been a challenging few years. But I feel very, very privileged to be where I am and to have come out the end of that journey, which I know many people don't get to do. So I am grateful for every day. I cry all the time and I don't care, because I love the small things. You know, my son left primary school last year, and at his end of school performance, I was absolutely bawling my eyes out, and he was like, "Mom, you're so embarrassing." And I was like, I just never take it for granted that I'm here. So yeah, I'm doing very well, thanks.
Crying is
sorry,
good.
I'm banging the table, which I'm always told not to do, but I'm trying not to cry. So I'm with you. Absolutely celebrate every moment. Sue, you joined NABS from the industry.
Yeah.
Is there a reason? Like, did you ever have a moment where you forgot to slow down, and did you have your own struggles? And can you talk to us about that decision?
Yeah. So I think two definite defining moments for me when I forgot to slow down, or was forced to slow down, let's say, which I think is what often happens to many of us. One was at the beginning of COVID, where in that first few weeks where, you know, that carnage of just being at home, trying to work and homeschool and deal with it all and navigate and work really hard, because actually, you know, there was a lot to do in the job I was in at the time, and there was pivots. I was running Magnetic, which was the trade body for the magazine sector at the time. Right. So there was a lot to do. You know, there was a lot of conversations, and, you know, inevitably we got into a little bit of that, you know, 10-hour days, and then going onto the laptop on the kitchen, and then trying to do the kids and all that. And my back went about 4 weeks in, a long-standing injury from years ago, and it absolutely paralysed me. I mean, I kind of can't get off the bed. It's locked. Had to ring the paramedics, had to do a 111, and they were not happy to come out to this 40-year-old woman who'd just flipping done her back in, until they saw me and realised actually I wasn't getting off that bed until I got some drugs and some gas and air and some kind of something to relax my muscles. So I remember at the time thinking, oh yeah, if you sit 10 hours at the same position, i.e. the wrong position, at a kitchen table with a laptop, and you have a week back, that's what happens. So that was definitely my kind of, self-care, reminding yourself that you cannot sit in the same position for 9 or 10 or 11 hours a day without taking breaks. It's just one of those fundamental truths about the human physiology. Yep. So that was a good one. That'll do it. So that was a little reminder. And then also, when I first entered the fantastic phase known as perimenopause, which many of us know about, I described it to someone at the time like an overnight change. I thought someone had taken out my reasonably functioning, non-anxious, quite clear thinking brain and given me a shit one. Yeah. And I got anxiety almost overnight, and I had no tools in terms of how to deal with that. So I threw everything at it. Obviously, you know, the doctor, the hormones, the therapy, the antidepressants, the meditation, the wild swimming. I tried lots and lots and lots of things over a couple of years to get myself back to a balance, and learnt a hell of a lot about myself. And, you know, some of the circumstances that exist for a lot of other people, whether in the, you know, menopause phase or any other phase where from a mental health perspective, you're struggling. So it wasn't directly that took me to NABS, but I guess if I hadn't had those couple of experiences, up until that point, I'd been incredibly lucky. I'd been one of those people who, thought, I had some sort of super brain that was just going to, and clearly no one has a super brain, so it was clearly arrogant and misplaced. But, without sounding like a total cliche, these things are a gift and, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger and all that.
100%.
Genuinely, those hard things have been the biggest lessons in life rather than the easy things. I totally believe that. So I guess that's what indirectly took me to NABS. So when I got the call and someone said, hey, there's this job here and I think you'd suit this, I thought, yes, that feels like something I would like to do.
How brilliant. And now doing something that really matters, which is something we've all got in common, I suppose.
Yeah.
That we're all trying to fix some of the things that we've personally experienced. Love that. Lizzie, with work style, you don't just tweak how you worked. You've rejected the whole 9 to 5 thing. You went, right, this isn't working.
Fuck it all.
Yeah, throw it all up in the air. What gave you the courage to do that? And what can you say to other people who are sort of, questioning, is this how I want to live forever?
Yeah, so for me, I didn't think it was courageous. I don't know that anyone thinks these things are courageous. For me, it was a conversation in the pub over 2 for 1 dark and stormies. I'm not classy,
Love that. Love
it
dark
all
and
just
stormy.
started with lamenting the way the world is now. And I think that I see problems and I try and fix them always. And I'm actually not very good at slowing the fuck down because I like to solve everything, and actually I have lots of energy and I like doing lots of things. But I think when I had that realization in that particular conversation with my business partner, he'd just been through burnout. I just had my first child, and we were like, hang on a minute. I don't want to be in the office during every waking hour of my son's day and then be at home in the evenings not working. I want to work nap times and evenings. And so we were kind of throwing things around, when you start a conversation and you're like, oh, that's a good idea, and by the time you leave the pub you're like, we're gonna change the world. So we came up with this word work style in the pub, and we said, in the digital age, it should be like having your own lifestyle. You get to choose your work style. You get to choose how your work fits around your life when you are at your most productive, and be able to work in the way that best fits with your well-being. And for me, actually, that was the start of my journey that I needed work style for. Little did I know at the time. And I actually had serious pregnancy complications in my second pregnancy with my twin daughters. And I had to have surgery at 23 weeks, followed by 9 weeks of bed rest. 9 weeks of bed rest for me is like torture. That is just not me at all.
Sounds great to me.
And it was interesting having this enforced. I knew that they only had a 10% chance of survival. That would decrease if I did anything. But being able to kind of escape into my digital working world was just transformative for me at that time. And so I think that really taught me that whilst, no, I'm not a bed rest kind of a person. And I should say that I'm very fortunate that against the odds, both our daughters survived.
Amazing. And how old are they now?
They're 9 now. So we've got twin 9-year-olds and a 12-year-old. But I think it taught me that, I'm not about slowing down, but I had even more of a burning platform in understanding the myriad ways that people might need to work differently. And if I hadn't been able to work in a work style way over the last 10 years, I simply wouldn't be in the workforce.
Yeah.
And I think I still have something to bring to the workforce. And there are so many people out there that are amazing people who, because of circumstances, illness, the shit that life throws at them, theoretically can't work. If we can let them work just the bits that suit them to work, then actually that doesn't just bring financial independence for them. It brings a sense of purpose, a sense of connection, enjoyment, meaning. There are lots of reasons why work can play a really positive role in people's lives.
Yeah, and not just for them, but for whoever they're working with.
Exactly.
So we had a guest on, Katie Fridman from Flexible Working People, and she's now got a massive, I think there's 100,000 community of people.
Wow.
There might be carers, there might be, women going back to whatever it is who just don't fit that model.
Yeah.
And, that's what they do, and they help them find work. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's how life should be. I just want to challenge you on, I'm not very good at slowing down, Lizzie, because, and just to remind you and the people listening, that slowing the fuck down is not about doing less. It's
about
not about
prioritization.
It's about, because you said, I like it, I love it, right?
Yeah.
So look, I said to you at the beginning, how are you? I'm great.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're really busy, if you're choosing to be busy, slowing the fuck down is why am I doing it? Why am I thinking it? Why am I feeling it? It's that.
And I think that changed for me after I had cancer.
Yeah,
I do think before then I was trying to do everything. And I think when you have cancer, you think, hang on, life is finite.
Yeah.
And I think it's both a privilege and a curse to have that hanging over you for the rest of your life. And I imagine that you have that as well, that 100%. You feel like you don't take it for granted. And so now I'm busy all the time, but some of that time is crafting with 2 9-year-olds and I love it. So, you know, I'm much better now at prioritizing and thinking, is this worth it? Is this how all the time, is this how I want to spend my time?
That's exactly it.
It's not slowness, it's prioritization.
Because everything you were doing before was probably for all the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Because you really have to, you've got to, and the pressure. And it's,
And also I just felt like work more, sleep less, cram more in. Whereas now I've really made my peace with, I want to be healthy. And I know that being well rested and doing exercise that's the single most important thing if I don't want the cancer to come back. Absolutely. So that's quite a good burning platform to be better at boundaries, I'd say.
Yeah.
And I think there are some shifts going on around us in terms of, you know, research and thought leaders, like we were talking earlier before we came online, Oliver Burkeman, the 4,000 week stuff. I think there is this, you know, narrative in this conversation that says we were a little bit obsessed with productivity and we thought that was about, you know, hacks to get more done. And the shift to intentionality and kind of, I guess it's linked to the mindfulness movement again, you know, which I'm a massive fan of. You know, 15 years ago, someone took me to a meditation weekend and I absolutely loathed it, didn't get it, didn't understand it. And then lately, in the last few years, I've got my head around this idea about intentionality and mindfulness and paying attention to your thoughts and your actions. And it's a game changer. Yeah. I have to say, rather than what's another way to carve up your day to be productive. Well, you know, it's part of it, but more based on your intentions and what you need to do and how you like to work and live. So, you know, obviously we still get caught up in, you forget it some hours or some days. But for me, now the practice of reminding yourself that that's the discipline you have to put into your life, I think is the game changer.
And the balance as well. I cannot remember because I'm a woman of a certain age, but the conversation I had yesterday, and if it's on the pod and you've heard it already, I apologise. But it was someone saying every day it's making sure, what do I want to do today for work? What do I want to do today for my family? And what do I want to do today for me? And making sure that you're achieving something in all three.
Yeah.
And even that little, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? How am I choosing to spend your time? These little frameworks you can give people. Yeah.
And it sounds a bit Buddhist, and I know it is based on some, you know, live in the present type Buddhist philosophy. But the bottom line is let's just go with today. Yeah. You know? Wow. I know we have to write some plans and have some objectives and think long term about life and work as well. But really, the only place you truly inhabit is now. So,
100%.
You know?
I don't think that's Buddhist. I think that's wise. I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now. There's another book.
Yes.
And absolutely, because we spend most of our life in a past we can't change, or catastrophizing or worrying about a future that hasn't happened yet.
Yep.
And when you get present, it slows your heart rate down. Just being in the moment, it grounds you. So I'm a big fan of that. I don't think it's Buddhist. I think it's brilliant. Sue, what are we seeing out there? What do leaders need to be doing more for teams? What are some of the patterns the traps that they fall down that they need to watch out for?
Well, I mean, my experience of our industry is there's lots and lots of people trying to do the right thing who are aware of the topic we're talking about, who are aware of that maelstrom and that kind of circumstance and are looking within their businesses to change it and to accommodate the conversation in a different way with people. And they're also struggling, some of them, because they're acknowledging that, you know, there's real challenges around some of that, because you have to make a choice about where you invest the time for these conversations or these pieces of education or these changes if you're going to redesign work or redesign something for one person. So, you know, the thing that people most struggle with is having the time to do it. My biggest piece of advice in terms of the thing I have the conversation with leaders with the most is, you know, lead by example on it, because, you know, there's thousands of things that people can do, but if the person leading the organisation does not have some tools or ability to share or show that they understand that, you know, much as there is always stuff to do and we'll never get to the bottom of our to-do lists and the tasks are never done, the life list never goes. The reality is that if you don't carve out and consider and be more intentional about you as an individual and the impact you have on others and self, and you don't talk about it a bit, not saying you have to share every aspect of your life, or, you know, not everyone's comfortable talking about, you know, mental wellness challenges, and I totally support that. But sharing what you do to make sure you can cope, and being open to getting it wrong, I think, as a leader as well. You know, I don't get it right. I mean, we can preach the theory of this stuff, but you can have days where you go, I did overreact there, or I didn't handle that brilliantly, or I did rush to 3 meetings and I could have been more intentional about the way I opened that one. You need to create an environment where people are okay to pull you up for it a bit, I think, as a leader. So for me, it's the openness of, I won't get it all right. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what I do on an individual level. I want to create an environment where these conversations are live, and that needs a little bit of capacity. So I need to carve out a bit of time to do it. Yeah. And that can be really small things. Like I've started being a bit more with my diary, which, you know, doesn't always work, but I call my Monday mornings mindful Monday mornings, and I block them off and I say, if I need to have a meeting in there, I will do it. But that is, I'm freshest on a Monday morning in terms of my ability to think, plan, strategize. So if I can have those 4 hours on a Monday morning to think about the week ahead and do my hardest work, I'd like it. And I'd like my Friday to be called Follow-Up Friday, which is where I do all of those task tactic lists that are like, I had 17 meetings this week and I haven't followed up with so-and-so, and I need to send an email, I need to send that appraisal note to somebody. I do that on Fridays. And the other 3 days are kind of carnage in terms of meetings and being out and about. So, and that, you know, it works 85% of the time. But, you know, that's better than nothing. And also, I hope it signals that I want, you know, people who work for me to be able to also share or adopt some practices that work for them as well. And then if we find that what everybody's doing individually is not going to work for us collectively, we'll have a conversation. But, you know, I think you've got to lead by example and share.
That's your work style.
I was just going to say that. That's your work style. And actually, it sounds familiar in a way that I haven't been starting work until 10:30 for the last 5 years, because the side effects of my medication mean that I feel horrendous in the mornings, and I just know that I'll add no value to anything. But I start the day before that 10:30 start. I go for a swim, and I was saying before that I used to say I go for a swim and then I start work. Now I say I start work with a swim.
Yes.
Because it's when I'm in the pool.
You'll be thinking.
Yes.
And I prioritise. I know I've got that mental space to prioritise my day.
Yeah.
And no one can talk to me because I do front crawl. My head's under the water. And that's when I actually get real clarity on my priorities. I sit down at my desk, and that's when I do the big rocks. That's when I do the three. I always say, what are the 3 things I'm going to do first? Do those, and then I start the day with a real sense of accomplishment. So
I totally agree. I used to go when I had a job. When I was at Eurostar, I used to come in the office late when I had training in the morning, and I'd shout really loudly about it. I've been in the gym. You know, that's part of my performance. I'm a better leader. I'm a better person because I've invested time in doing something for myself. And it's that shift, if you're a leader, to that shift in the sort of shame that we used to feel of doing anything for ourselves, and the cliche about the, you know, put the oxygen mask on first.
Totally. But it's not just about doing something for yourself, is it? It's also about the fact that you learn, I think, the more you understand yourself and the brain, and the more you pay attention to these things, is you learn that actually that helps you be more effective. So it's not, you know, I can problem solve on a bike ride. You know, I can dream about something and wake up and have an answer to stuff. You know, the brain works in curious ways. And once you know that the switching off is sometimes the thing that helps you problem solve, I know I can pattern form when I'm not thinking about something. And sometimes when I'm on something, I can't get the answer. When I'm off it, I can get the answer. And once you know those things, you just give yourself much more permission to go, hang on, you know, I'm thinking about stuff or not thinking about stuff to try and get answers to stuff, life and work, all the time. Yeah. That could be a swim. It could be gardening. It could be in the shower. It might be on a train.
It's probably not on a Zoom.
It's probably not on a Zoom.
When you're in your inbox.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
Yeah. There's a geek box in our book, because it's littered with academic geek box if you want to geek out about stuff, about neural pathways from a neuroscientist, about how, you know, and you might say, I want to take a different path to work every day for creativity. But also, if you do something completely different, you allow your neural pathways to connect in new ways, and you come up with more creative solutions to problems. So we always say this, work style is not a benevolent thing. Yes, it creates more inclusion, but it's not just about being benevolent. Work style is about being at your personally productive best and being able to advocate for yourself and say to your employer, I will be more productive and I will do better work
Yeah.
if I work in this way. So I think it's empowering people to do that.
It sounds really obvious, but it's so, if you're mentally and physically strong, you're more productive, you're better at what you do. It sounds so obvious. Same with slowing the fuck down. We always, people want to slow the fuck down. Sorry, I'm doing another accent.
You said you wouldn't.
I said I wouldn't, but I
promise.
Sorry. But, I want to speed the fuck up. And it's like, this is about growth.
Yeah.
Stop doing shit that doesn't make a difference. Focus on the things that are important, make better choices, and line everyone up, get everyone feeling good. That's going to speed them the fuck up.
Yeah.
Lizzie, before you talked about what success is, and you're great because you're doing what serves you, and how do you get leaders to do that, to reevaluate what success is? Because for so long it's been the car, the house, the number, the money, but actually, having kids and having a life. How do you get leaders to reevaluate what that success really looks like?
I think it's really interesting demographically. It's well known we're all living and working longer. 21% of the world's population will be over the age of 60 by the year 2050. But I think the way that different segments of the workforce evaluate success is really telling. So Randstad's global survey showed for the first time last year that work-life balance is the number one factor when people are looking for a job. So it has pipped above pay by 1%, 83% versus 82%. So it's still only marginal, but I think that is really telling that there are people coming into the workforce, fresh talent, who are predominantly looking for work-life balance. And 1 in 4 people who change jobs change for work-life balance, not for progression, not for pay. And so I think it is incumbent on leaders to recognise that if they want to attract, retain, engage, and get the most out of their workforce, even from a purely commercial perspective, this is what they need to do. They need to move to more autonomous and trust-based working. So I think for us, there are stats, and I could bore you about why autonomy is critical for attracting, retaining, engaging the best talent and allowing them to work at their most productive best. But I think that that's the thing that for leaders excites them, is that there is a source of competitive advantage. There's a way of being different and better here. But also, there are a lot of leaders out there who've been through shit too. And I think sometimes they've learnt to bury it because we were part of a generation that don't talk about it at work. And so often, yes, they'll see the business case, but there's also a bit of it where they think, actually, that resonates with me because, and if you can coax out those stories and those lived experiences and that vulnerability, that's often where you see real change, because that's where the culture change comes from. So it's not just about changing the kind of environmental factors, the technology, the enablers. It's about seeing your leaders in a different light and recognising that we all need to fit our work around our lives to be at our personally productive best.
It's so true. And it seems really obvious to me that trust, this thing about trusting your leader. No one trusts someone who's perfect. No one trusts someone who doesn't present themselves as human. There's so much evidence around that, how that vulnerability and that honesty and that openness and sharing learnings makes you a better leader. It just amazes me, this, the opposing view to that, which is we've got to be, in first, out last, be the perfect, know everything, as opposed to great leaders who know what they need is a team of people around them who know more than them.
Yeah. It's making me stressed to even hear you say that, because, as a leader myself, I just go, oh my God, imagine that. Imagine if I had to get everything right. Imagine if there was no space for me to try new things and go, guys, I messed that up, sorry. Or, I'm trying this at the moment, but I'm not sure it's 100% right. Is it working for you? Imagine the pressure on yourself.
It's just creating a growth mindset at every level of the organisation, isn't it?
Yeah.
As opposed to, I'm Billy Big Bollocks that knows everything better than you. Yes, we are, in fact, allowed to swear. Sue, this industry that we're in, it just seems to lean into that, though, doesn't it? It's just sort of everyone's got to be perfect, and this sort of version of ourselves at work, not helped with social media, that everyone's, I'm delighted to announce, and you see that every day, and scroll through LinkedIn and you're like, oh God, everyone's doing better than me. What do people need to do in order to step away from that? Because I think a lot of that pressure in our head is this fear of other people's judgment and I'm not good enough. How do we unlock that?
Well, one of my personal favourite quotes, which I think I've had pinned on a post-it above my laptop at home for a few years, probably since I've been on social media more and seen my kids on it more, is comparison is the thief of joy.
Love
so
it.
I think that whole kind of, no, stop it. Just because
Yeah.
someone else has launched faster, done something else. Look, we're all competitive, and most people in our industry want to win because, it attracts those types of people. And clearly, we've got lots and lots of successful people around. So, there's nothing wrong with that. But the reality is, I think you have to do that step back and go, what am I doing? And how did I end up, getting myself in a tangle over something that's not relevant? Because my intention today was, or my intention this week was, to focus on X, Y, and Z. Why am I getting, it's the challenge of our lives not to get distracted by not just social media, not just our phones, but just our thoughts. For me, the number one skill that if you could teach it in schools and people could come into the workplace knowing how to do it, would be to manage your thinking and to allow yourself to stay focused and not get distracted. Because, I think it's the underlying cause of an awful lot of people's anxiety and performative comparison and eventually burnout. So, I think teaching people that skill and having a culture in an industry who says, this is an open conversation, which it's far better than it was 5 years ago. I mean, you go to endless conferences now, and I speak to endless people who, platform and talk about these types of topics and have, like your podcast is doing. So we've moved so far, but I think what we need to do is now give people the how.
Yeah.
So I think, there's a big difference between I buy it, I understand it theoretically, my intention is to be better at this, and then how do I do it when every day we're battling with, lots of priorities and, a workplace design that's not currently right. How do I move it from, I see the goal, but how do I do that? I think the how is really critical. And I think, therefore, allowing leaders to say, I don't know the answer to the how, and then getting in help from whoever that is to help them with the how, it is, really brave, but also really necessary. Otherwise, we're not going to move it forward. We're going to be stuck in the kind of, we'd like it to be like this, but we don't know how to do it.
I would say as well, we've recently launched a survey in collaboration with King's College London. It's a 5-year longitudinal study, and it's looking at how people work. It's looking at exactly that. What are their ways of working in terms of autonomy, trust, technology, and what are the implications for them in terms of well-being, productivity, and inclusion? And the thing that I've been most impressed with the chief people officers who I've been speaking to is that they are coming into that survey because they don't know. Not because they do. Every single one of them has said, we're in this to learn. We want to hear the lived experiences of our employees so that we can be better. And that recognition that we are in a period of change. We didn't even know that agentic AI would be a thing even 2 years ago, let alone 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So we need to listen more and learn and formulate the how as it suits each individual person, but also each individual organisation, because we've been through a period of change, but we're heading into an even bigger period of change.
And I think that's also about one of the things I'm very passionate about our industry, and NABS, I think, can facilitate this a little bit, is the power of the collective. When we sit in our own worlds, worrying about our own stuff, whether it's our own personal stuff or our own team stuff or our own organisational stuff, we lose all this golden, connected, informative, brilliant, insightful, joyful stuff from other people. So I'm a massive, massive fan of trying to create spaces, whether they're events or whether they're platforms or whether they're, you're doing on this podcast so brilliantly, where people can go, I could learn from someone else because, yes, we're competitive, but also some of this stuff is good for everyone. So, I'm a huge, huge fan of the power of the collective. And I think we did lose that a bit 5 years ago. And I think, it was obviously driven by COVID. And I think people are getting more aware that, some of the stuff that used to happen by osmosis, and we can be intentional about creating it now in terms of people coming together and just having moments where they share or they've got a topic to discuss. It's the best stuff. It's what makes this life and world and industry so rich. I mean, it's why I've stayed in it for 30 years. So, I think NABS and other businesses can facilitate creating some of those spaces, and it's a massive passion of mine that we don't just help individuals who are struggling, we create spaces where people can learn together and share together, and I think that is the key to us moving forward successfully.
I agree. I think everything you've said, it's both, isn't it? It's this sort of systemic change, creating the conditions, and us as individuals. And just going back to that, if anyone's listening, I have the voices. How do I not listen to the voices? It's something we talk a lot about in Slow the Fuck Down, which is just recognise why you're thinking something. Is it real or is it imagined? Getting present, that stops that, it interrupts that flow of I'm catastrophizing and I'm panicking, because that's what happens, and the belief drives the feeling, drives the behaviour. We also talk about having little individual personalities in our heads, almost like the film Inside Out. Who have you got up there? Who can you pass the mic to in a moment? So it's just this sort of metacognitive, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking? That interruption that stops the panic, that stops the hamster wheel. And if we can do both those things, create the systems, create the communities, give people those personal tools, hopefully we'll make a difference. Sadly, we're out of time. I've got the final question. Oh my God, I could have listened to you both forever. There's so much richness. We might have to do a sequel, people. There's so much stuff you've given it. What's the sort of one takeaway that you want the audience to hear that's going to give them either tools or advice just to help them slow the fuck down? What would it be?
The thing that I would say is, what's your work style? Just prioritize taking a bit of time, and it can be each day, each week, once a month, once a year. Just take a bit of time and think, what do I want my work style to be? Because if you start with a blank sheet of paper and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how do you want to fill your time? What do you want to prioritize? And how will that help you to be at your personally productive best? I don't just mean productive about work. I mean the rich tapestry of life. You know, we have one wild life. How are we going to use it? So
one wild and precious life. I absolutely agree. And, you know, just even slowing down enough just to try and work that out. If you're feeling your Sunday night is full of dread, something needs to change. My Monday mornings are not mindfulness Mondays, but my first, I do not before 10:30 on a Monday in my diary is training and dog walk. So I always take the dog to Highgate Woods, drop my little one at school, my 9-year-old at school, and go straight into Highgate Woods and make sure I do a workout as well. And then that's it. I can cope. God, when I was at Eurostar, my Mondays were just back to back, meeting, one-to-one. And I dread Mondays. They were so overwhelming. So yeah, I love that advice. Think about what your work style is. What choices can you make in order to facilitate where you can be at your best? Sue, what about you? What's word from you?
It's similar, I think, but it comes from the perspective of try and understand what your kind of, what I call my rest and recovery roster is. You know, if there's 2 or 3 things that for me are so key to me having the capacity to think or to rest or recover or to get off the hamster wheel, what are my go-tos? And, you know, sleep's my number one. So if I'm starting to feel like I'm struggling to get off the wheel, it's normally because I've not had enough sleep. So check things like that. My second one is always, you know, what is it that I immerse myself in from a distraction point of view that helps me? It's the arts for me and theatre. So if I haven't been prioritising that, that's probably also why I'm struggling a bit. So, you know, work out what your 3 are. And they could be related to your work style, because some of them are related to preferences around how you work, but some of them are about specifically, what's your go-to? I mean, a lot of people, it's exercise. What are your 3? What's in your rest and recovery roster? And have you got enough of them in your average week?
Jigsaw puzzle. Need a jigsaw puzzle on the go.
Knitting, gardening, all of the above. You know, I've got more than 3, but which 2 or 3, if you're not doing them and you've gone a couple of weeks or it's now a month, and you've not been prioritising, that's probably why you can't go off the wheel.
Work out what matters and choose it. That was absolutely brilliant. Gosh, thank you guys. It really has been. I feel like I've been in front of an expert panel on slowing the fuck down. That was really brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank
you. To you, Lizzie, to you, Sue, and to everyone that's been listening. That has been Slow the Fuck Down. Thank you for listening to the Slow the Fuck Down podcast with Glow London and The Drum. If you found this episode interesting and insightful, please help us spread the word by giving us a follow or sharing it with your friends. And if you feel inclined to give us a quick review, that would be awesome. Let's all do what we can to help the world slow the fuck down.